My name is George Graham. I'm a member of the class of 1973. I practice law with the law firm of McIver and Graham in Conway, South Carolina.
And how did you first hear of the Citadel?
My first inclination or my first introduction to the Citadel was done by my dad, who was a Second World War veteran, and he told me about a commander that he had, and that guy was from the Citadel. And the second inclination I got about the Citadel came from one of my high school teachers.
Did they encourage you to apply?
Yeah, at that time, it was a 1968-69 school year, and integration was about to take place. And the faculty at my school, Chestnut Consolidated High School, that's located in North Myrtle Beach, they were looking for kids who had done well academically in high school to go to some white schools, so that when integration actually took place, they would be successful. And that was the effort, to try and get some guys, some women who had done well in high school in the all-black environment to go to a white school and do well, so that integration would be an objective that would be successful. And that's kind of how I got to know the Citadel, because my teacher bought a book, and I bought a catalog that was done at the Citadel. And the more I read, the more interested I became. And with her aid and help, I went ahead and applied.
That's great. What was your impression of the Citadel when you arrived on campus as a freshman?
Well, I loved the campus because I had come down for one of those meetings that they have. So that was my first thing. And our guide, the guy who was taking us around, wasn't really honest with us about the environment here. So when I got down here, I had a terrible, terrible impression, because the guy's yelling, spit's flying, he's telling you to move knob, you understand, pop off and run up the steps and run back down and get in formation. And I knew I thought I was in the wrong place whenever this white guy, who I learned later to be a fellow named Matt Carroll, who was from Conway, he fell out. And when he fell out, I was always taught when you could run the aid to go do it. And I went and helped him because he fell out. But what I did was, I broke formation, which is a no-no. And I got to know the first sergeant and the company commander and people like that before I should have. Let me put it that way. So for the next 3 months was really the worst years of my life.
Are there any interactions that you had with Charles Foster on campus as a cadet that you could describe?
Yes, Charlie Foster came to see me. Charlie, I think, was in 4th Battalion, and I was in Mike Company in 3rd Battalion, and Charlie came over to see me because, you know, when you're in the Corps of Cadets, you are assigned a senior, and my senior knew that I was having a difficult time with all that was going down, and my senior thought I was going to quit. And Charlie came over to have a conversation with me. And he wasn't the only one that had the conversation, but what he said to me during the conversation was, you're not from Charleston. You come to a completely white environment. The thing you got to remember is that the Citadel is an environment that don't know anything about us either. So like you gotta adjust, make adjustments and get used to the white guys here. You're gonna demand the same thing of the white guys, that they gotta make the adjustment and get used to you. So it was a two-way street. And my senior had asked him to come over and talk to me because he thought I was going to quit. And Charlie told me there's nowhere in the world you can quit. Quitting is out of the question. And I started to think about something my dad told me. And what my dad said is, if you can't do the academics, I understand that. But you can't quit based on the military nor the physical aspects. You cannot quit under those circumstances. But if you can't handle it academically, come home. Other than that, go somewhere else. Don't come home, you know. So, and then Charlie came back to see me a second time. And the reason he came back to see me a second time was to see how I was doing. He seemed to be concerned about my quitting, and he wanted to do everything he could to make sure that I made it. In my battalion, I was kind of isolated, and Charlie would talk to me about how to handle the isolations, how to handle the plebe system, or how to handle the knob system, and the best he could under the circumstances. So I'm looking at him and I'm saying, at least I can see some black people. Charlie couldn't see any black people, so I'm getting it from someone who knows exactly what he's talking about, and he inspired me in that direction. So I didn't quit.
That's wonderful. As our first and only African American cadet on campus his freshman year, how do you think Charles felt?
Charlie had to go through pure hell. The isolation is probably the big thing, because you're isolated so much as an African American, because you can have conversations with your roommate and other people in the company, but you couldn't be intimate in terms of real close friendship, because sometimes you need an outlet and you need to talk to someone. Charlie recognized that, and he came and talked to me on at least 2 occasions. And the other thing that was really beautiful about him was when he saw me on campus, he would wave. I couldn't wave back, but he'd wave, or he'd walk up to me and he'd say, you know, how's Conway doing, right? And that felt so good. But when I think about Charlie's situation, Charlie didn't have anybody to do that with, you know? I recall a situation that I had with an upperclassman that really was just driving me to quit. I spoke to him about that, and what he did was he told me about a similar situation he had. And then when I realized that I wasn't a Lone Ranger, I wasn't the only one feeling that, it just made me feel better.
And what was your impression of the Citadel after your 4 years?
After my 4 years, I felt that I could conquer the whole world. I felt that there was nothing impossible, because I'd been through it all. I mean, I thought, now I was 22 years old, but as far as I was concerned, there was nothing out there that I couldn't do, because I'd done been through pure hell. I'd done been through everything. Everything from the not being able to eat, to upperclassmen not liking you, the push-ups, the banging in the chest, the yelling, the display of hanging ropes, all that kind of stuff. Once I finished, right, I knew that the school was special, because I didn't think there was anything I could not do. And then when I went in the Marine Corps, I think the Marine Corps was a piece of cake because of the Citadel. When I went to law school, I thought law school was a piece of cake because of the Citadel. Because things that the cadets did to you here, right? Some of that stuff should not have happened. But a lot of that stuff prepared me for life. And that's kind of how I felt when I graduated, and that's how I feel about it today.
You mentioned hanging ropes. Can you elaborate on that?
Well, a couple of times during my tenure, my knob year, some upperclassmen displayed some ropes above my room and in my room that was meant to intimidate and frighten me. And that wasn't a good feeling, because you know, of course, during that time, the room doors were not locked. And I'm not sure if they're locked now, but room doors are not locked. And it kind of frightened me a whole lot to see the hanging ropes. Now, I know I learned some of the people who did it, and they were doing it, I think, in just according to, because when I came an upperclassman, I confronted them about it. And the answer I got, but they were doing it in just, but I was intimidated and I was frightened about it.
Our last question for this interview today is, in your opinion, why is it important that we remember Charles Foster?
Charlie Foster, as far as I'm concerned, is the standard bearer for what all of us ought to be about. His coming here first and his enduring all the obstacles that were placed in his way, and him doing it with such grace and understanding in his effort to try, at least for all of us who were here, to keep us here. There's nothing you can say about him but pat him on the back and say, thank you, Charlie, because there are a lot of folk that were here and stayed here because of Charlie. Charlie was a good guy. I'm not going to say a good cadet. He was a good guy. And when he approached you, here's what he did not do. He was not derogatory regarding the school. He held the school in good standing. So he could have been derogatory, but he wasn't, especially when he talked to me about staying here. And I know it would have been uncomfortable, one mouth telling me to stay here and the other mouth saying derogatory things about the school. But Charlie's our standard bearer, you know. I mean, he just showed all of us that it could be done. And the reason was he lived it. It was his graduating that told all of us, look, this is not an impossible task. Just hang in there and do the best you can, and you'll do it. And that's what I think about Charlie. Charlie's good people. He was good people. And he kind of adopted me because I was an outsider. I was not from the Charleston area, and he knew a lot of the other guys here, and I think he knew I was from the Conway area, and I couldn't call my parents every day or see them every other day like some of the guys here from Charleston could have. So he kind of adopted me and kind of watched out for me a little bit.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.